I feel like we kind of fucked up by not talking about Ngannou versus Fury at all on last week's podcast, which I take full blame for. I completely forgot he was even happening.
It was like loosely in the back of my mind, but frankly, if there'd been anything else on at the weekend, I wouldn't have watched it.
I know what you mean. I watched it and I regretted watching it for about an hour and a half before the fight started because the co-main event finished and I was like, great, what do we got? 10 minutes? 20 minutes until the main event starts? No. Like an hour and a half of bullshit. Stupid acts, rap people that never sound good because they're also tuned on their fucking record and then they perform live and it sounds terrible. And then like another 30 minutes of just the same three people saying the same shit over and over and over again. This should have been for the world title. Fury's going to school him, but Ngannou's got that power. You never know. There's only so many times you can hear that variation.
Yeah.
It's also hard to sell a boxing fight where you have no clips or highlights of one of the guys boxing. You know what I mean? That doesn't exactly help the video reel out. It's a little bit like when the UFC has to put on Alex Pereira countdowns and they're like, we had like 3 fights. One of them was a decision that was messy. Like there's not a lot to work with. You're going to see the bloody fucking flying knee 20 times. You're going to see Strickland get left hooked about another 6 times in the same clip.
How did you score it?
I scored it for Fury.
Same, but I had it even going into the 10th. I mean, that's actually, we'll talk about more on the podcast, but I think it was rounds 8, 9, and obviously 3 were obviously Ngannou to me. Every other round was close, apart from the first 2. And I still gave, I think, all of those rounds bar 1 to Fury. So I think in my head, I had it going into round 9 as I can't do the math, but I basically had Ngannou with 4 rounds, including the 10-8, and then Fury with 5 rounds,
and then he wins the round 10.
How did you have it?
I wasn't scoring it. The first time I watched it, I wasn't scoring it, but I generally felt like apart from the 2 rounds where Ngannou, obviously the round he drops him in, and then the round where I think round 8, where he's really putting together combinations and looking like he's got Fury in trouble. I did kind of think that there was enough that Fury was doing, and it wasn't clean. It didn't look good. It wasn't particularly high level, but you know what I mean? This isn't MMA. It's not, you don't score it on power punches. It's about who's landing consistent, clean, technical shots and controlling the space. And once Fury realized that the man has ungodly power, I did kind of feel like he just stayed on the outside, worked the jab, hit him with some good jabs, that kind of stuff. But there's loads of interesting things about the fight that I want to say. Loads of stuff. I think this is the first time I've seen an MMA versus boxer in a boxing match where I feel there were MMA skills that were able to be taken advantage of. It's like you think how much Fury abuses the clinch in boxing because he's usually so heavy and he's fighting guys that don't have any training, and suddenly he's fighting Ngannou who's strong as fuck, but also has spent his entire career having to deal with people putting maximum exertion into a clinch. And you could just see that this usual entry of go for a 1-2, grab him up and wear him down, it just didn't work. Ngannou was able to bully him. Anything that was outside of that outside jabbing range, Ngannou just seemed like he was so strong, so powerful, was able to take advantage of things that Fury can usually take advantage of. And also, I think it has to be mentioned that I think Fury, I'm not saying he didn't train, but he didn't look like, I've seen Fury not that long ago look way sharper and way better. And I think
slowed him down a lot.
And I think there was an element of surprise. You don't know what a guy's going to be. There's no tape on him. You don't know what you're meant to prepare for. And then all of a sudden, he's throwing really technical things like good combinations on the inside and a counter left hook that maybe you didn't. I think there was a learning curve there. but it's terrible. I mean, this is all wins for Ngannou.
Yeah.
He wins the battle of the hearts and minds. No question.
Yeah, I mean, they were chanting Francis like throughout the last third of the fight.
Yeah, and also he maintained his dignity and his respectability. He enhanced his reputation in a way that none of the MMA guys that have fought Jake Paul have been able to do. That Conor McGregor certainly wasn't able to do. You know what I mean? I mean, let's be honest. That Mayweather-McGregor fight, Mayweather was 42 years old, 41 years old, and literally like got off the sofa 2 weeks before the fight just to go through the motions. And apart from the first couple of rounds, pretty much got a good grip of that fight. I think that was what everyone's worry was going to be. And in the end, it's like, I want to see Ngannou versus Wilder. I'll watch Ngannou versus AJ. I'll watch these fights. They're interesting.
How much do you think Fury kind of flattered Ngannou, though, by not taking it seriously? So I think, the reports were that Ngannou in sparring is quite wild, was leaving himself open a lot, and he didn't really see that at all in the fight. Like, no nerves or anything, wasn't excited, just fucking put it away. Like, the game plan, like, just patient, countered, understood when to press forward and to attack. Didn't give Fury too many openings at all, and didn't bite on too many like those long feints.
Agreed.
Because Fury was quite slow and quite wary of getting like caught. There was a few where he was barely out of range, and I think once he'd established that range, he wasn't going to feint inside of it. And I'm not saying like Ngannou impressed me, but I just think that like if you put him in there with someone that's going to take him seriously now, how much different is it going to look? Like Usyk would eat him alive.
Honestly, dude, I think Usyk would eat him alive. And here's the weird thing about Ngannou. I mean, we'll talk about it on the podcast, but I think Ngannou would lose to a good 60% of the guys ranked below those top guys.
Do you want to do a cold open, do the intro and roll in? Like, we can use most of that, I think.
I think we can just do that. Let's roll. Hello. Welcome back to the MMA Split podcast, where we are not talking about MMA today. We're talking about boxing, something we passionately avoid on this podcast because boxing is a terribly run sport that only I really watch the big fights for anyway. But we do feel bad because last week's podcast, we acted like there was nothing going on this weekend. And there was Fury versus Ngannou, which for MMA fans is boxing, but we have a dog in this race. And we've been talking about this on previous episodes. We talked about the whole Ngannou getting the deal when he left the UFC. I think I was more in the quite critical camp. I didn't really think he'd pull this big of a fight out, and he did. He got a great, contract with the PFL, got a fantastic deal to fight Fury. That happened this weekend. We're going to talk about that. Later on, we will do a look ahead to Jailton Almeida versus Derek Lewis, who is, of course, stepping in on short notice to replace Curtis Blades. We'll give our thoughts on that and the whole card. Little bit of MMA news as well to touch on, and some sad news in the world as beloved star of the sitcom from certainly me and Josh's younger days, Friends, Matthew Perry, who played arguably the best character in the whole show, Chandler, tragically drowned to death in a jacuzzi. And I think I speak for the whole world when I say, could I be any more sad about this right now? I wouldn't have made that joke, but I saw Rich Eisen made that joke on TV.
I'll allow it.
I appreciate it. Rich Eisen made that joke, and he claims to be a personal friend of Matthew Perry. So if personal friends can get on TV and make that joke, I, who have never met the guy, can make that joke as I try and justify humor, which is never a good starting point. We'll be talking about all of that. If you are enjoying the content, like, subscribe, comment, give your thoughts. Rest in peace, Matthew Perry. Put that in the comments. With all that out of the way, let's crack on to last week's action. It is our fault we didn't give a preview for this. I will admit I forgot this was even happening. That's how little attention I paid to this. And even when I was watching this with my girlfriend, who had to put up with a solid, I'd say, 3 hours of nothingness in between fights on this card, we'll be discussing that. I thought this was going to be a one-sided beatdown. I literally was watching for the novelty of it's on at 11. It was meant to be on at 11. It's in my time zone. There's nothing else on. Fuck it. Let's see the spectacle and let's just see this happen. Same way I watched Mayweather McGregor, where I thought McGregor had no opportunity. That was always going to go one way. We get to the main event, and Jesus Christ, he doesn't get his hand raised, but it's a split decision win. And Ngannou knocks Fury down and wins the hearts and minds of pretty much everybody watching, whilst destroying the entire reputation of boxing and doing irreparable harm to Tyson Fury's reputation, as he's effectively going to next be going into what's meant to be his career-defining fight. Josh,
And when are we going to get that as well?
And when do we even get that fight? Because I don't think that
still
happens.
Pushing for December 23rd.
He ain't going to be ready after the punches he took, man. We'll be discussing that. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the fact that he booked that fight on this date before he even stepped in against Ngannou. I think, so here's the thing. Do I think Fury won? Yes, I think he won the fight. Did he look good? No. Did everything around this make me think that this was a guy that just did not take his opponent seriously? 100%. I think booking a fight less than 2 months after this one basically is a statement to say, I think I'm getting out of here without even taking a hard shot. I think there's criticism that deserves to be thrown at that, but none of this is Francis Ngannou's fault. That man stepped in to fight the world heavyweight undefeated champion in his professional boxing debut, almost 2 years after his last fight, because of all the injuries and knee problems he's had and delays with his contract. And Jesus Christ, does he not just do himself justice? Does he not just show that he deserved to be there? He made a lot of people think that he'd won that fight, and he hurt Fury. And there were moments where he bullied him. And what was meant to be an easy night and a night for boxing to again say, look, this is why boxing's better than MMA. Jesus Christ, did Francis Ngannou flip the script? Josh, what were your thoughts on the fight? Who did you think won? And how did you digest this?
Well, watching it live, I had a really shitty stream. So I saw the parts of every round. There was only 4 rounds I saw kind of the bulk of. And I knew, obviously, I missed the knockdown, but I caught it on replay. So watching it live with the very one-sided commentary and Carl Frampton's input, it's very easy to believe that Ngannou was absolutely storming it. And to be fair, I think we'll leave it in the cold open. So I've already kind of touched on the fact that I felt there were all the obvious rounds were very much Ngannou rounds. Every other round was close. I did give it to Fury, but very easily could have been scored the other way, in my opinion. Obviously, like you said earlier, it's not being scored on damage. It's being scored on landing, clean shots. If you really break it down, I watched it today. I feel like the close rounds probably are, to a judge's eyes, quite clearly Fury rounds. It's just kind of the optics of seeing the big shots land. I think it's impossible not to factor that in your brain a little bit, but I could tightly see it going in Ngannou's way. And yeah, man, he's absolutely kind of put the world on blast, put the world on notice. Eddie Hearn did come out and talk about doing AJ against Ngannou, which I think would be a pretty good fight for Ngannou if AJ carries on fighting like he has been. Interesting. What I'm really pissed off about is the Usyk Fury, unification bout, which is just. Can we start on that? Like how disrespectful it was to have 2 fights booked in quick succession.
It's massively disrespectful against a guy that has the world record for the hardest punch ever recorded.
Yeah, and Fury obviously wanted to have the extra weight on to some degree, so he could still wear on Ngannou, because even though sometimes he was a little sloppy in trying to enter into these clinch situations. And, it kind of created space where Ngannou could land, quick, short shots, as you touched on, very much kind of coming from his MMA background and just like having that instinct. Did not look ready for the fight. Looked slow, that weight really hurt him. He was carrying a lot of extra timber there, and just couldn't really push the pace. Couldn't really get the feints going quick enough. Just looked, after the third round, looked like a very cautious and wary man that probably wish he'd put a bit more time in the camp.
Oh, 100%, dude. I think I kind of look at sort of 4 different factors with this. I think there was a mental element. If you're booking a fight 2 months after this one, and that fight is effectively the most important fight of your career, you are saying right there and then that what you're doing against Ngannou is just a joke, that you have no expectation of loss. You have no expectation of damage. You have no expectation of any kind of resistance and problems. I think mentally, there's no doubt he wasn't fully prepared. I think physically, he wasn't fully prepared, because you're not going to push yourself to peak in a camp and then have to peak again less than 2 months later. You're going to view this as a tune-up fight. Get to 60%, get the rhythm in, get some rounds under your belt against a guy that's a little bit awkward, and then ramp it up once you get to your real fight. I think there's 100% a factor there. I think there's a factor of, how do I put this? There's no tape on Ngannou boxing. And you can't really use his MMA tape in the same way, because at times he was so untechnical, and there's kicks, and there's wrestling, and there's all these other factors that kind of change the way that you can interpret that. And let's be honest, if you were to watch a lot of that MMA footage, you would think this guy's just a haymaker. He's a bar brawler. So I think the lack of knowing what you were going to be coming up against definitely had an effect. And then, listen, let's just be real here. Fury has a tendency to fight to the level of his opponents. He's always been that guy that's put in his best performances against his best competition, and some of his worst performances against some of his worst competition. None of that's a justification. And I think the final factor that makes a huge difference as to why we saw the fight go the way that we did is Ngannou didn't beat himself. He wasn't wild. He wasn't reckless. He didn't panic. He didn't gas himself out. He didn't let the moment or the personality of Tyson Fury beat him before he even stepped in, like we saw with Chisora, like we saw with Dylan White, where these guys were kind of beaten men before they actually fought him, because there's just this aura of Fury, the Gypsy King. He just has this personality and this kind of, gravitas that I think kind of shrinks a lot of people. And Ngannou just didn't care, man. He had no expectation, no pressure. He could just go out there. He's getting paid. He's got the MMA excuse. If anything goes wrong, he's fighting the best of the best. No one expects.
Let's just say real quick. So he said it was, I think he said 3.5 months. So like 15 weeks. And Fury does 12 weeks. And like you say, he goes to the level of his opponent, which really is to say that the guy isn't naturally motivated. He needs the right opponent to push him mentally in training camp. Ngannou came to box 10 fucking rounds. Ngannou, coming off a serious fucking surgery, man, guy was fired up, guy was switched on, guy was disciplined. Game plan was perfect. Pretty good fucking corner, to be honest.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, like, shit, I love Ngannou so much, but I love Ngannou so much more now because, they've always been kind of like, because he seems like theoretically he can be so perfect. We're guilty of it ourselves. It's so easy to kind of like chip away and knock at certain things, like the Derek Lewis fight, did Stipe break him mentally? Does he train hard enough? Like the Garn fight, he implements the wrestling more, and you're like, this guy's really embracing the hard work. He has faith in the process. He knows how to grind. This guy's, if not for the injuries and all the bullshit he has to go through, could be everyone's fucking favorite fighter, hands down. And now we're getting to fucking see more and more of that when you haven't got like UFC like trying to keep you under their thumb. I love this man.
Also, I think it helps. Listen, the guy athletically is as elite as it comes. I mean, you want explosivity, power, damage, durability, chin. His last two fights, the Garn fight and this fight, showing an incredible cardio that we never gave him credit for. Went 10 rounds, never really looked that gassed. So it's not like Fury's fighting a
which is very difficult when you're that fucking big.
Mm-hmm.
When you have
At
that
37.
much muscle, 10 rounds, like, man, after like round 5, like, because you can see him sweating from like round 1. After like round 5, I'm like, I'm fucking impressed. I'm fucking impressed. Rounds 8 and 9, I was just like, my fucking guy. Fuck. I love Ngannou.
Listen, and couldn't happen. He's a nice guy. He's got everything. Looks like a badass. Talks like a gentleman. Has a story and a backstory that will melt your heart. I mean,
fights for others. Fights for fighter pay.
We're English, and the English love an underdog story, so we're suckers for it. But nobody, I mean, this guy 3 times gets on a little dinghy to try and get him from Morocco to Spain, gets sent back from Spain to Morocco, that basically just dump him in the middle of the fucking desert with nothing and say, get your own fucking way back. And in reality, we don't care if you don't make it out of this desert, because then that's just one less motherfucker trying to come across. Deals with all of that, gets to Spain, goes throughout the whole of Spain to get to Paris, is homeless in Paris, looking for a gym that he can work and janitor in exchange for training and food and board. And then all these years later, having started this at what, 27? He's in there in his debut with a guy that claims to be one of the all-time great boxers, and certainly in terms of skill set, you can't argue that Fury has got skills that we've never really seen with that size and reach and all the rest in the heavyweight division. And he won over everybody that watched. And you can't say anything else. He was never hurt. He was never wobbled. He was never deterred. He hurt the champion. He dropped the champion. And he's
getting a little Sly cameo in the background. Fucking.
What's that?
Well, we can hear Sly coughing every now and again.
Oh, that's
that
Sly.
I can actually hear him shouting out. Oh, I thought I heard Sly shout at the end there.
No. There's some people walking down my street outside. I've got the window open. Hang on a second. Let me close the window. Let me close the window.
I was thinking we were getting a little Sly cameo because it's been a while. Actually, I tell you what, while we're tipping references to like former co-hosts, Miguel, and I didn't tell Miguel how I felt the fight went at all, but told me that he doesn't care what I think or something like that. Like Fury won that fight, so all 3 of us have gone Fury on this, by the way. But I just thought I'd give Miguel's little like 2 cents as well.
I think the problem with something like boxing, because it has subjective judges that decide these things, and because as human beings we look for moments. You know what I mean? So many other sporting things that you watch, you watch a close football game, but it's the moment that a goal is scored or not scored or saved or whatever it is that kind of decides who wins who wins that match. It's a lot more definitive. With boxing, you're watching a fight where there's 8 rounds that are one guy not looking great, but is just doing a little bit more maybe than the other guy. And then you have 2 rounds where the other guy drops him and then rocks him and damages him and almost finishes him. And so this is what sticks in your brain. There's no doubt, listen, this is disastrous for boxing because it does make it look like the way that boxing works with these protected guys that sit at the top that only fight selected opponents until eventually they get paid enough money to fight each other. It makes it look, and it makes everybody question, like, really? That's the most dangerous boxer in the world? That's the biggest, heaviest, scariest guy that there is? Really? And this guy who's never done it before comes in and is this close? It's not a good look for Fury. It's not a good look for boxing. However, you can't let that distract from the point that whether you like it or not, whether it was ugly, whether it was clean, whether it was technical, 8 of those 10 rounds, man, are Fury just edging it. And listen, you can give 1 or 2 of those rounds to Ngannou. And if you look at the actual judges' scorecards, there were a lot of those middle rounds where it was 2 judges, Fury, 1 Ngannou. Then the next round, to Fury, one Ngannou, but a different one for Fury and a different one in Ngannou and all the rest. So
Yeah.
most of the time, at least 2 of the 3 judges thought that those 8 close rounds were flipping over to Fury. And the odd one, somebody squints and goes, I can see enough for there to be Ngannou.
Well, I only saw it as 7 close rounds. I had
well, the first round's clearly Fury.
8, 9, and 3 Ngannou. The other 7. Actually, yeah. To be honest, first round Fury, second round, I didn't think was as close at all. I thought that was Fury pretty clearly. Those weren't as pronounced as the rounds that I gave for Ngannou. So then what we got, so 5 contentious rounds. I gave 1 of those to Ngannou. I can't remember, it was like 5, 4, 5, or 6. So 5, 6, or 7. Yeah, and it's
and here's the lost fact of the fight as well. Up until that knockdown, and listen, round 3, I thought Ngannou was doing better than he was in the first 2 rounds. But the first 2 rounds, like I was watching with Miranda, he doesn't obviously watch a lot of boxing, and I was kind of giving her the, like, one guy's going to look really technical, the other guy is sort of looking to land a big punch, kind of, you know, what I thought the fight was going to be. And watching those first 2 rounds, it did just look like Fury was just like, man, I'm fainting, I'm freezing this guy, I'm throwing him off with my movement, I'm changing the angles. Like, you watch those first 2 rounds independently of the others, and it does look like it's Fury's just going to have fun and pick him apart. And then as soon as that left hook lands, it's like Ngannou gets this richness of confidence, and Fury has this sudden, like, oh, there's real danger. Real danger.
Uh-oh, daddy's home.
And listen, Ngannou must hit like a tank, dude. We never know with MMA to boxing, because there's the whole, is it 4-ounce gloves? Is it the fact that you can charge down and finish them? Like, no, Ngannou's got power.
Although, and I'm not, you know, it's not a dirty shot or anything, but, you know, it does catch him on the back of the head. He's down and up pretty quick. It's not the worst I've seen Fury rocked, but it was still like, that was fucking huge, like, watershed moment in the fight where people are like, oh fuck.
Yeah,
oh fuck.
Listen, as well, let's be honest. You know, we you want to talk back of the head. Fury misses a right hook later in the fight and basically lands a full-on elbow to the face.
Yeah.
So it's boxing. Yeah, these things happen. Joe Calzaghe is one of my
I'm just saying, like, but getting hit in the back of the head's a little different to getting hit other places, and, you know, it was
yeah, but he lands it. You got to think as well, because he's landing it. He's not throwing to the back of the head. Fury went in for that second 1-2. He obviously is turning his shoulder as the left hook comes in. So I think there's just a natural, you know what I mean? You can't control how your opponent's head's going to turn.
It's been, like, comparatively, I haven't seen him land. There was a couple of shots where he lands good, but I haven't seen, like, you know, like the hook on Overeem style. How does that transfer with boxing gloves? What were they wearing? 8 or 10? 8.
They'd be wearing 10 or 12.
10 or 12.
Because I think heavyweights, I think they use 12 for heavyweights. And then it goes down. I think it's 12, then it's 10, then 8, and then eventually, like Floyd Mayweather, I remember when the Mayweather-McGregor boxing match was going on, and it got announced as being like 8-ounce gloves or something like that. And Conor McGregor was like, oh, I usually use 4. I've only got 4 extra ounces. You haven't got a chance. And then somebody pointed out, it's like, yeah, Mayweather used to box with 6-ounce gloves when he was at his lowest weight. So this is one thing everyone always thinks. Everyone always jumps to like 12 ounces, thinking every single weight class fights at 12 ounces. And there's this gigantic leap between 12 and 4. And at heavyweight there is, but like, man, you get down to like flyweight, featherweight, it's like 6-ounce gloves, man. There's no difference there. And really, you know, I will give, so Fury's obviously eaten a lot of crap. He's lost the public battle of opinion, which is a dangerous thing to lose. It's not a good look for him. It's not good PR. I'll give him credit, though. I don't know how easy it is to fight somebody with no tape. Like, you're fighting a guy who's got no loss of confidence. He's never been bested in boxing. He's never been given a reason to think that he can't do it. in a real fight. You've got no tape on him. You just know that he's a physical freak. And by the way, his MMA experience completely takes away one of your best weapons, which is being up in that clinch and wearing on guys and tiring them on and bullying them. And now you're fighting an MMA guy. That clinch, you're never going to beat an MMA fighter in the clinch. It's just not going to happen. They understand that space better than boxers ever can.
Yeah, he also didn't quite have enough size to kind of leverage. So he didn't have enough height and the weight combo up there to really kind of wear on Ngannou in the same way. It was just every clinch felt a little bit more like he was just trying not to get hit for like 10 to 30 seconds. It was
It was a weird one, man. In terms of the event itself, I hated it. I hated everything apart from the fight. It took way too long. They had like 4 prelims or 5 prelims, okay? Every single one of those prelims was a knockout before the 3rd round. And it was still like a 7-hour event.
fucking hell.
It was
I only watched
painful.
I saw the main event, or I kind of saw it live. And that's the only aspect of it that I watched back today. So
I just don't understand
totally
why.
legally, probably. Totally legally.
There was like 5 music acts. You know what I mean? And I understand that you're trying to put on the spectacle. But at a certain point, it's like, we're here for the fights, man. We're not here for Lil
If
Baby.
you're going to criticize
by...
sports washing, criticize it for the human rights violations it covers up. All right. They're going big for a reason. They're splashing the cash for a reason.
Well, they're splashing it in the wrong places. It's like they do this big reveal. They do the 5 prelims. And then there's this big thing. We're like, oh, that wasn't the ring for the real fight. That ring is going to now emerge from this place. And it's like, I give a fuck. I couldn't care less. I'm here to watch
some
2 people fight. Yeah. It got to like 1:30 in the morning before they stepped out. It was ridiculous. And it's a huge problem with boxing, which is that it's just badly run. The events are badly organized. Showtime Boxing just closed down. They're not doing events anymore. They're canceling their boxing section. And they were one of the few people that actually put on well-run events. Now it's just going to be this fucking shit. Big money in Saudi Arabia and a bunch of bloated crap that I don't want.
Well, they've got this big fucking sports season until March, right?
Yeah.
They're throwing around the stupid fucking sports wash money.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming we're going to get Usyk Fury towards the end of that.
Probably.
If we had AJ Ngannou on that card or around that time, I'm a little bit excited for it, to be honest. But
do you think those fights are very different?
Yeah, I'd much rather just have the Fury Usyk fight December 23rd. As great as last weekend was, that's what I would have wanted. And I'm a little frustrated with, because anytime you delay a fight in boxing or there's a reason, fights disappear like that. It's so hard to get the fights you want put together. They disappear like that, and it's just bullshit. I'm worrying that something's going to happen now,
Especially with unification bouts, man, because you got to remember the individual belts. The organizers of each of those belts don't want a unified champion. What they want is their belt being contended, their mandatory challenges getting opportunities, because that validates their ranking system and all the other fighters that they've got. A mandatory, a title unification bout, specifically, let's say for the WBC, is a disaster, because what that means is that their mandatory challenger is now just one of 4 guys trying to claim for the belt. So it's not just that you've got to organize these fights for big money and work with 4 different belts and 2 different promoters and an organizer and all of these different pieces, and everybody wants their own rules and their own this and their own that. You're also dealing with the fact that if you don't get that fight in a certain time, at least one of those 4 belts is going to start saying, well, we've got such and such, and we want him to be a mandatory challenger. And we're now going to block this because we're going to say, no, you can't have that fight in February, because our guy then is going to have to wait longer. So I think there would be a huge shame for boxing if a gimmick fight like this that ends up making their champion look foolish compared to the MMA debutant then delays or ruins one of the biggest fights that boxing was ever going to have. That would be a tough pill to swallow, but still a better pill to swallow than Dana White watching this. Because if Dana White had just backed his boy and given him the contract and let him box, and we all know why he didn't, because he was worried about another Conor McGregor. He didn't want his marketable guy to get schooled and made to look like an idiot by somebody that actually does the sport of boxing. And that's what he was worried about. And in the
He
end,
also didn't want to fucking cow to someone that was standing up to him.
Yep.
He didn't want to entertain increased fighter pay.
Yep.
Actually, I'm sure like we should probably touch on it in the news section, but maybe now. Did you see Strickland's comments
No.
alongside Don Fry? I think it was like a bullfighting thing. They cut his broadcast when he started talking about fighter pay and how his advice to anyone would be to not be a fighter, and how little these guys are making, and he said like contender series guys on contender series you're doing 5 and 5, you lose it's just 5, you win you get to 10 and 10. Maybe it doesn't go your way.
I think it's 12 and 12. I think 12 and 12 is the minimum.
Yeah, I'm just quoting or paraphrasing what Sean said. So he's like, you get to a certain point where maybe things are going your way. You've made a sum title of 60 grand, but you across your career, but you've got to be all in. Like it's just like a shit fucking way. He's like, I'm like technically like one of the rich ones, but it's just yeah. They don't like people pushing back on this. I've talked a lot about how Contender Series kind of replaced Ultimate Fighter as a very efficient way to like churn around the fighter roster and get kind of a similar kind of caliber, but for like fucking a percentage of what you were paying previously. And then how frustrating it is just not knowing how good people are comparatively, because you're seeing people fight debutants constantly. You don't get that kind of MMA math frame of reference, which is stupid as it is in terms of just looking at results. When you see styles match up and how fighters deal with things across 15 minutes, it does give you an idea of what they can do against the next person or someone else you've seen that guy fight. It's just, it got frustrating, not just in terms of like fucking fighters on fighter pay. For fans, feel less engaged. For analysts, we are analysts technically. It's a fucking podcast, son. For analysts, it gets more frustrating to try and break down fights. But yeah, Strickland came in, pushing about fighter pay. They cut the broadcast early, and I think he let a little bit more of it go on his Instagram channel, or Instagram page. I'm old, bro.
That boy doesn't give a fuck.
He doesn't. I appreciate
He's the champion.
that.
He's the champion we didn't know we needed, but I think we don't deserve. Which doesn't make him Batman.
Makes him like early Batman when he was just like killing people.
Ninja Batman when he's training with the League of Shadows.
Oh no, I mean like from the comics, like like some of the early Batman comics was like him just like fucking people up.
And they realized in the 60s, kids need to read this.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on these things. It's a friend of mine, Nick, growing up, used to I've like seen a little bit of it, I've read some, but he was very, very on it. And he was like, yeah, man, like early Batman's like my favorite Batman. He's like fucking killing people. It's way darker.
And still, anyway, Zack Snyder ate so much shit for having his Batman
kill Dana White.
Fuck Dana White. He lost out. Ngannou won. Tyson Fury's got some mending to do. But here's the thing.
He's got some weight to lose.
Right now, this is Ngannou's moment. And I'll preface this by saying that I think with both Wilder and AJ, there's outside factors that make me think he's got a shot. Wilder's got kind of the same trick he does, but maybe with less technique, although a lot more experience. AJ looks like he's gun shy. AJ just looks like he's not going to take the opportunities when they come. And that could leave him open. But let's be honest, if Ngannou was to try and do the gauntlet, if you say, okay, you're 0-1, we're going to give you 10 decent but not amazing guys, I don't think Ngannou beats all those people when it's a young, hungry, up-and-coming boxer. But he's in this like weird space where there's enough question marks about these top guys that you kind of think there's an argument to say he could win. But do you think that if we saw, because obviously now that people have had the footage on him and seen that, okay, you can't just like think it's an easy fight. Do you think maybe he gets found out? Do you think maybe in a year's time we look back at this and think, and here's just an example, but if AJ or Wilder was to beat him easily, and then Fury goes in and beats Usyk 2 times, you know, in a year's time, we're not really thinking about this fight because history plays out in a different manner.
Well, see, this is what I'm saying. I think he's been flattered somewhat by Fury's complacency. That being said, though, he is now going to be a draw, so that AJ fight's realistic. And yes, AJ's kind of slow, been very gun shy, doesn't seem to mentally be as switched on. Seems to be making kind of basic mistakes that even I'm like kind of criticizing from my lofty fucking sofa, my ivory tower. But yeah, I think he's got a legit show against AJ. And yeah, I think he probably would get whooped by most guys that are actually going to come in there and box him seriously, unless he catches them, which can be a big if. Getting older, it's going to be hard to push yourself when it's not just your boxing debut against the Gypsy King for a shit ton of money. You know, it does get interesting. But with boxing being the fucking shit show it is, I don't mind having this little wrinkle thrown in. I just really, really would much rather have had Fury Usyk for Christmas.
100%. Is it not nice, though, that we finally get to watch one of these MMA versus boxing matches, and it doesn't make the world think MMA's a stupid sport?
Yeah.
Because the Ben Askren situation, the McGregor situation, all the other people that Jake Paul's for.
Stop over-legitimizing Jake Paul as a boxer.
I'm not trying to.
There's only very recently gotten to a point where I'm not willing to just wholesale shit on him.
I understand that, but either way, it's not been a good look for MMA. So it's nice to see us get some payback, have our boy have a Cinderella story. And let's not forget, ever since Rocky was made, well, it effectively fictionalized and created a whole narrative around the real life fight of a journeyman that managed to knock down Muhammad Ali in the first round and then survive all 15 rounds of the guy. There is this idea about like going the distance, getting like a moment and making a great fighter look a little bit less than. It's kind of what boxing's all about to a certain extent. Obviously, it's about the wins, but that Rocky idea of the little guy having his moment and making the dominant champ look and be a little fearful. It's a great story. The Ngannou film, I haven't had a chance. But I will watch the Ngannou.
It's great.
The Ngannou film will be great.
Yeah. Oh, for fucking sure.
It was the star-studded. There was both Cristiano Ronaldo and real Ronaldo. McGregor was, of course, there. Had a stare down with Ronaldo. I don't know why. McGregor's just feeling like he's becoming more and more of just a social meme more than anything else.
I mean, I saw he did a picture of like Luis Figo, Rio. Was Ronaldo in that picture? Maybe.
I don't know if he was in
the man's mad as fuck. Fuck that cunt anyway. Back him a testing pool though, for all that's fucking worth.
Yeah, seems as getting rid of USADA anyway to do in-house testing. Because that works out perfectly. Nothing bad ever happens when a sport centralizes its own processing systems. You know, like the NFL. The NFL doesn't have a regulated pitch standard. And funnily enough, the owners have different viewpoints on how much money should be spent on those things. Who would have thought? You can't trust the people that make money from things to do the right bits of regulation.
Yeah, I mean, the worst one for me was, well, actually, the worst one's the AstroTurf, but do you remember the old Oakland Raiders stadium?
Yep.
It was a baseball pitch.
Yep.
It's just, it's a joke. It's a fucking joke.
People get upset as why would they want to move to Las Vegas and have their own brand new stadium? I can't possibly imagine why.
The Rock tried to build them a new stadium.
That's not real. That's in Ballers.
And
The Rock was a terrible financial advisor who often lets his own ego and emotions dominate situations. That was my takeaway from watching Ballers, is at many points post season 2, The Rock, in fact, post season 1, The Rock is most likely in the wrong right from the off. All the problems in season 2. Oh, I'm going to start stealing the most dominant competitors' agents. Yeah, because that's going to work out well. See, is it season 4 when he's just like, yeah, I'm going to illegally try and tap up this high school kid by shagging his mum to get close to him?
Yeah, season 4, I think.
Oh, and at the same time, is it the previous season where he's just like, oh, I'm running out of time to have kids. I'm just going to not pull out of my girlfriend and then try and pressure her into not having birth control. Because that's a healthy way to have children.
The show is actually
terrible.
A lot better than no. It could be so much more like Entourage season 6 kind of style, just glamorize, nothing happens, bullshit.
Do you know? I think the biggest issue,
characters.
The biggest issue with Ballers is it's around season 3 that clearly The Rock tapped on the producers' doors and it's just like, guys, I want to show off my acting chops. Give my character some heavy stuff. Let's get emotional. And then the more they ask of The Rock, the more you realize that's not what he's good at. Just go back to being a cool guy that looks tough and says funny one-liners and is charming. This is not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about MMA. No. And we have MMA is back.
I'm going to float an idea right now, Matt. Do you want to do 2 eps this week? Or, and I apologize for everyone having to tolerate my hangover, but I am very hungover.
You're struggling.
I would love to go grab a beer and quickly roll one. Do you want to do an intermission and make a cut? We could always do 2 eps.
The only thing is I've got my girlfriend who's very patiently. I mean, she's being so, check this out. She's just sitting here, just literally being quiet on her phone while I'm doing this, which I appreciate greatly.
Let's smash it out then.
If we could maybe smash it out. And here's the thing. It's not a bad card coming out.
Look, there's a lot of fights I'm interested in, but there's not a lot of fights I'm interested in.
There you go. The main event was going to be very interesting because Gelton Almeida, he's running through everybody. He's a light heavyweight who's just gone, everyone at heavy is fucking shit. And I'm going to take advantage of this. And I've been saying this for a while now, that everyone outside of like 6 people at heavyweight are absolutely terrible. Nevertheless, him versus Curtis Blades was going to be that perfect test of like, okay, can you actually do it against a guy that has these skills? And by the way, is a lot fucking bigger than you. And I don't know if he's a better striker, but he's certainly shown he's a better striker. And now it's Derek Lewis. And I love Derek Lewis. I want Derek Lewis to fight for as long as he wants. And all I want him to do is fight the Blavoy Ivanovs, the Chris Daukases of this world. Like, he's not, we all know Derek Lewis isn't winning a title. Don't sell him up to these guys that are just going to wrestle fuck him. And can Derek Lewis win this fight? Yeah, of course he can. He knocked out Curtis Blades. He's knocked out guys that are better than him, but he shouldn't have beaten because he has that ability and he doesn't panic and he'll find that moment and he'll pull the trigger and do something crazy.
But Almeida is the fastest. So best grappler we've ever seen at heavyweight, probably Verdum. But Almeida, while being a fantastically technical grappler, is also, like you say, he's a light heavyweight and it transfers. He is the fastest, most agile, most kind of dexterous grappler we've seen at heavyweight, for sure.
If this fight hits the ground, it's over in a minute.
Yes. And then that's the thing, man. Usually what Lewis will do is keep like a longer range because, you know, he can be an explosive guy in his own right. He has got the kicking game when he wants to. He can get away with having a longer range like that because it gives him a bit more time when he sees the kind of the level change, the entry for it. You know, that's how he kind of fucking caught Blades with the uppercut. But Almeida's not really going to do that, and Almeida's not going to want to stand and bang with him, so he's going to look to close the distance. So I think it's become a clinch game very quickly. And the DC fight just led me to believe that I think Derek Lewis is going to get clinched up. If he doesn't catch him early on in the first round, he's going to get clinched up, tripped or taken down, and it's going to be over in 1.
Let's just be real as well, dude. He's taking this fight on short notice. You cannot tell me that Derek Lewis is going to show up on the fucking press day, which I think is actually happening right now, or has already happened earlier today. It's not like he's going to say, yeah, man, I was in the gym every day, feeling fit and ready, didn't have a fight, but was in. No, he's been fucking like maybe coming in to do some shit, but he's been living his life, dude. He's taking this fight because he's just like, they're going to pay me. I've got my new 8-fight contract. I don't give a shit. I can maybe knock the guy out or I don't. But it's going to be that simple. The only thing that makes I have a question about on the ground is Derek Lewis is going to be one of the strongest and heaviest guys that Jailton Almeida has ever fought. Is there an element where the skill differential can be compensated by Derek Lewis just exploding up from side control, for example? And is Almeida going to be technical and strong enough to be able to deal with somebody who can just explode up and use power to force his way through in spite of a lacking of technique?
Almeida's at a level where the second you're taking liberties by putting your hand on the mat and creating enough room and separation when you're not directly framing off, you've just got your hand on the mat trying to get up. You will get swept, you will get armbarred, he will be able to sink in hooks. It's going to be very, very fucking tricky to try and defend that way against him, is my suspicion.
I would agree with you. And I think
your hands need to be on his chest or on his hips the entire fucking time. And that's when you're like fucking on top. Like from bottom, like it's not enough to try and buck him. I think you really need to get like back up to the cage and try and cage walk, or try and like shift you back up the cage, like, and go slow with one hand down and framing off. It's really going to be pick your poison kind of time. And
can we be honest?
I think it's over in one way or the other. It has to be over in one.
Can I be honest about something else as well with this? Look at who they called. Okay, we all love Derek Lewis, but Derek Lewis is in that safe space now where everyone loves him whether he wins or loses. He's not winning any titles. He's going to take whatever fight you give him. You don't lose anything by booking Derek Lewis in a fight that he loses, but you can gain a lot for a prospect by putting him against a Derek Lewis, having that prospect beat him, and then go on to bigger and better things. Who did they not call for this? That's the thing that I'm interested in, because it's not Volkov. Volkov didn't get a call. Sergey Spivak didn't get a call. You're telling me he wouldn't have loved this opportunity with his background and wanting to avenge what happened with Cyril Gane? So you start looking at it, and it's like there's guys that they could have called that I feel there's a stronger argument to say would have been ready on a short notice fight compared to Derek Lewis. But they picked Derek Lewis because they like Jailton Almeida. They, in the back of their mind, they want to give him a good fight, but they're booking him in a fight hoping that he can maybe be that guy that emerges and is the part of the new, young, exciting heavyweight.
I know that this fight got made before Jon Jones got injured, but I'm glad they've done it that way because I want to have cover for the other fight now. I want to have guys ready to step up if, God forbid, anything were to happen to Aspinall or Pavlovich at this stage.
We're going to touch on that at the end because we obviously still need to talk about something that happened, I think, literally, the day after we recorded our podcast last week?
I think
the news broke. Maybe, literally horrific timing that we weren't able to talk about that last week. Aspinall didn't get a call. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying that there are other guys that they could have put in.
It's
worked out for the
best. Is
Aspinall
Pavlovich not is it not for an interim belt? Have I got ahead of myself there?
It is for an interim belt, but I'm just talking about who they called to replace Curtis Blades.
Yeah.
That was before, like we say, that fight got replaced before Jones got injured.
Although I think the reason Aspinall and Pavlovich weren't going to get put in there anyway, but the reason is they probably would have wanted to have cover for the championship fight. And then, Spivak would have been a much better shout, but I'm kind of glad it's gone this way around, so that we have guys like Spivak available should someone need to fill in on short notice for the interim belt.
This is true.
Which is just how fucking stupid the UFC is that I, as a fan, have to kind of think like that now.
Well, listen, injuries happen, and we're going to talk about that replacement in a second. I just want to go through a couple of other good fights. So I think we're not going to go through the whole card for this one, but I think a couple of sleeper fights. Gabriel Bonfim, undefeated, 15-0, hot prospect. in his first co-main event, taking on Nicholas Dalby. This is not a setup fight, man. Nicholas Dalby quietly has been putting together one fucking hell of a winning streak. He has won his last 1, 2, 3, lost to Tim Means, but before that, I mean, he's winning way more fights than he's losing, man. That's the crazy thing. Since 2019, he has won 1, 2, I think 3, 4, 5 fights, lost 1 and drawn 1.
Since he got his like mental health on track and kind of rediscovered his mojo, and he's always been a great fighter.
This is
since
good
he went away, he
test.
came back, had the fight that got called off for too much blood on the canvas.
Cage Warriors.
Yeah, Dolby's a guy you want to watch fight. Bomb Theme's exciting as fuck. It's a good fight. It might be the only. It's like one of like 2 or 3 fights that I'm kind of excited for on this card.
Abus Magomedov versus Chao Borralho, I'm very curious about, because there was a lot of hype about Abus, and then obviously he took the beat down from Strickland, kind of gassed himself out in that first round. Then you've got Chao Borralho, who is a grappling monster. I mean, that guy gives you no space on the feet. He'll throw just enough strikes to make you think that maybe that's an element, and then he's straight in on taking you down. And I don't know how Abus handles that, to be honest. So I think, but one thing we've learned is I don't think taking a beat down from Sean Strickland is anything to feel too embarrassed about these days. I mean, you lost to the goddamn world champion.
Yeah,
that's an interesting fight.
That's a good fight. I'm a little bit more excited for Rodolfo Vieira against Petrosian.
That was my next one.
Both guys. Theme Pichel's not a bad fight. It's just that Vince is kind of at the tail end of his career, and it's just it's kind of a fun fight on paper, but I'm worried about how that one's going to turn out.
Bacradino versus Zaleski dos Santos. I think that's a fun fight headlining the prelims.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of Zaleski dos Santos. He always balls out.
Sleeper fight on the prelims.
And Overkill Hill against Denise Gomes.
That's a good fight, man. Denise Gomez looks badass. I mean, what was her last fight? I think she absolutely
Yasmin Jauregui
ran through Jauregui, who was a huge hot prospect. So there's some fun fights on this card, man. But like you say, I mean, Dontel Mays versus Rodrigo Nascimento, I'd say Nascimento has that quite easily. Ismael Bonfim, Pichel, we just talked about. Victor Hugo versus Daniel Marcos.
Casey and Bukowskis fighting, which I like. Sorry, which one's that?
Victor Hugo against Daniel Marcos. Daniel Marcos 15-0, big prospect. But again, you'd expect him to win that. Montserrat Ruiz taking on Eduarda Maura. I don't know anything about Maura, but she's undefeated.
And she's fighting Scarf Hold, so they don't really they're not trying to challenge her too much.
Maybe she's got some experience wearing scarves in winter now. That was a terrible joke. We'll delete that from the podcast.
It's better than the Matt Perry one.
Yeah, that was a little cold. I feel bad about that one.
Rich Eisen did it first.
Could I feel any more bad about this? I don't know.
Oof.
I just repeated it. Just made it worse. I've got 2 edits to do now. All right, let's talk about the main event news from last week, which isn't breaking news now, but it needs to be talked about. Jon Jones injured his pec, tore his pec, out for 8 months. Fights off. He's off the card. They had Pavlovich as a backup. They have not inserted Pavlovich into this fight. They've instead dropped Stipe as well, put in Aspinall on short notice, and made it for an interim title, which I do understand, because I'm pretty sure that whoever wins, or regardless of who wins between Jones and Stipe when that fight happens, I think they both retire. And I don't think you risk losing the credibility of Stipe putting him in against a young, hungry monster. I respect that. Make it for the interim title so it's worth Pavlovich's and Aspinall's while. Have them then as a quasi, maybe they'll fight the winner of Jones Stipe when that happens. Have your big legacy fight. Yeah. And then the reality is both of those guys retire, and then you make the winner of that interim belt the champion.
So this is like one of the very, very rare occasions where the interim belt actually means something, because we're going to have this fight, and whoever wins is essentially the heir apparent. They just have to wait for Jones, Stipe, and then after that fight, they will be promoted to full
And you know
UFC
what?
champion.
You never, if Stipe was to beat Jones when that fight gets rebooked, you just never know, because that crazy bastard might just say, I'll fight the winner of that fight. He's that kind of guy. Doesn't give a fuck. That's why we love Stipe. We're rooting for him so hard. It's still tough for Stipe, though, because he was ready. He was peaking. He was getting close to that point where he's ready to rock and roll. And now, at 42 years old, he's got to stop, still keep fit and healthy, not wear himself down too much, and then re-peak at a later point. I do think that's tough. For Aspinall...
Tougher to come back from a torn pec, though.
This is true. For Tom Aspinall, man, I would back him to beat Pavlovich on a full camp. But that guy in that first round, if you haven't got all of your P's and Q's, if you haven't been doing your sparring, if you are not sharp and ready to be able to play the long game against that guy, fuck, that is a tough fight, dude. And that's a hard fight on a full camp.
Yeah, but I feel Aspinall has this.
I hope he does, man. That first round is going to be difficult, though. The reach disadvantage, the power disadvantage, I'd argue. I mean, really, he's got to get hold of it. If he can get that takedown in the first round, I think Pavlovich is one of those guys, if you can just take the air out the tires, get him down, make him work a little bit, I don't think he's the same guy round two. I think he's one of those people who comes out so tense, stays very technical, but he's still exerting a huge amount of output because he's used to getting guys out in that first round. Guys that tend to do that, they're not built, even if they think they've got the cardio for 5 rounds, it's different, man, because when you're training and doing 5 sparring rounds, you're not exploding the way he is and throwing the kind of shots that he is with the same kind of force. And listen, it's not to say that he's reckless. Like, he is so technical whilst being so aggressive early on. But handed over and beat him. Survived the early onslaught, took him down, beat him up, tired him out, and finished him. And Overeem's not a great grappler. And really, apart from Curtis Blades, we haven't seen Pavlovich fight a good wrestler with the skills that we know Aspinall has, combined with the jiu-jitsu that Aspinall has to finish the fight when he takes it down. And the only guy who has those skill sets is Curtis Blades. And what's the biggest issue with Curtis Blades in the first round of big fights?
Doesn't turn up.
Doesn't wrestle.
Just
doesn't wrestle.
Shits the bed every time.
Doesn't wrestle. Doesn't use his number one skill. He just can't help himself. He just wants to get
He's
that
always
feel.
having to try to blend in, setting up the takedowns with the stand-up game. And for him, it's very hard to get a read early on with the stand-up. Aspinall won't have that same issue. It's just getting caught with something stupid.
I'm just sick of short notice.
Lucky, really.
I'm just sick of short notice replacements for title fights, man. I've still got the bad taste of Volkanovski Islam 2 in the back of my mouth.
Yeah.
And I hate what ifs. I hate what ifs. Maybe that exact same thing happens if they fight 6 months later when it's pre-booked for UFC 300 or whatever. But it feels different. If Aspinall wins, it's a great story. If Pavlovich wins, I can't come away from this feeling like I know who the better fighter is, because that thought is going to be in the back of my mind.
No, absolutely.
Yuri versus Alex is now the main event. Are you happy with that?
I'm fine with that.
It's deserved. It's the actual belt.
Makes sense. Yeah. I'm excited enough for Yuri coming back.
Still a fucking great card. Fucking sensational card that we're not going to talk about because I don't want to jinx it. We will talk about that card next week. Final thoughts before we go. The Eagles sweep Washington.
Yeah.
Wasn't pretty, but it never is.
Well, actually, I thought we played pretty well. It's about as well as we've played consistently across all 3 phases of the game. It's just that the Commanders are actually pretty good this year, even if they did really fucking lay one out against the fucking Giants the week before. But somehow did well to keep getting the ball out.
Good plan.
Scary
Good
Terry
quarterback.
is scary as fuck. Dotson's fucking lightning fast. In the end, the scoreline was kind of close, but I mean that last touchdown didn't really have me worried. It's just like fucking man, those red zone fumbles. Like we have been so inefficient in the red zone this season. So again, there was that. But it's Kenny G and like a weird one on the brotherly shove. So I'm not going to overthink it. Overall, happy, good performance, and AJ Brown setting records, most consecutive 125-yard games. I think he's almost at 1,000 yards already.
He's a little bit. He's a little
and something.
Yeah, it's him and Tyreek,
So,
man. They're fucking. Bug just landed on my microphone. Him and Tyreek, dude. Tyreek's over 1,000 yards,
bro. They're bugging your microphone.
Tyreek Hill's already over 1,000 yards, man. We actually had a really similar weekend to you. We swept a division rival that's physical and hard to play, but ultimately won't have a winning record this season, and effectively condemned them to failure this season because Patriots are now 2-6. There's no revival. You made the Washington Commanders trade their two best pass rushers the very next day.
Very weird. Yeah,
that was weird. Funny how they timed that.
Clearly, I think it's poor compensation for Chase Young, considering he was starting to look like maybe he's on the cusp of something,
and was the second overall pick.
Yeah,
that's. I mean, what can you say? They're getting. And here's the crazy thing: a lot of people are saying that the 49ers aren't going to have the cap space to re-sign him next year. So it's literally we've got him for 9 games, and then next year, free agency, Chase Young on the free agent list. There's going to be a team that pays some money and picks him up and is pretty grateful.
I think so, yeah. But yeah, even though the 49ers lost again, they do. They make me nervous. We've got a tough stretch now as well. So as good as it is to have like a game over Dallas, a couple games over the 49ers, it's just padding. It's just having like a cushion because the stretch we've got now is going to define the season. And then we finish out with like the Giants twice and like the Cardinals, I think. It's like the last 3 games. So should win the last 3. It's just getting a good run going against this next stretch.
It's reverse for the Finns. We've got Chiefs in Germany this weekend. A lot of things I'm happy about, though. We didn't have to play some people that were kind of 50-50 on the injury list last week, so they should be fresh for this week. The whole team flew out Monday. They're going to have the whole week in Germany, getting used to the time difference, getting over the jet lag. Mahomes had the flu on Sunday night in an away game in Denver, which means that the Chiefs would have had to have flown back Sunday night. Very unlikely that I think they haven't even flown out yet. I think they're flying out today. Maybe we can catch them with their pants down. Then we've got the bye week, and then we've got like the Jets, Raiders, Titans, Commanders who have now traded away a bunch of their best pieces. There's a nice few games where you think if you just beat the teams you're expected to beat, we then finish the season with Cowboys, Ravens, and Bills, which is fucking tough. But you could go into those 3 games, playoff secured. Now it's just about can we win the division and all the rest. So it's a nice position to be in. I'd like to see us be a little bit tighter with the football. Like there's a few games I've seen us play where it's a little bit like there's a stupid interception or a drop fumble. And it's kind of like, we're so good. We're going to hit Tyreek Hill for a 40-yard touchdown the next play. Or Tua's going to throw a dart into the one man, and throw off the safety with his eyes and all this kind of stuff. We're all going to... It worries me because we're going to play a good team that takes advantage of those mistakes if we're not tight. And this is the worry where it's like, I've seen us play 2 good teams and lose, and the rest of our games have been pretty much dominant wins against lower opposition where we're not really being forced to kind of be at that kind of higher level. So we'll see what happens. Tua's throwing too many picks, but the thing is that a lot of them are not his fault. Like there's been about 4 or 5 where the way our offense works is he's throwing it into an area where the receiver's meant to hit. And we've had a few situations where like a young receiver or like Chase Claypool just doesn't run the correct route or takes the wrong hitch turn or something like this. And so they can look really, really bad. But the great thing about our quarterback is he's not a media darling. He's not out there trying to prove he's an MVP. He knows that people talk all this shit about him and have his whole career. He's just trying to help the team. He'll take all those hits. He'll say it's his fault when it's not. And really, to be honest, we've got to pay him next year. So we can maybe knock a few million off because we're like, hey, you might have thrown 45 touchdowns, but you know what? 14 picks.
That won't be what defines it. It's going to be the state of the market come.
It's going to be his health, dude.
Sort of January, to be honest.
It's going to be his health because right now he doesn't take stupid hits. He's not getting overly sacked.
It's other players' health as well. You get a couple of injuries or a couple of players like thinking, a couple of teams thinking we really need to upgrade. That's what's going to impact his contract.
This is also true.
They say like the picks, like Jalen's throwing a shit ton of picks this season. Again, some of them are just like deflected passes and just like mistakes on like the other side, or it's like, it's like the Dallas Goedert one where he basically like fumbles it, but because it never like touches the ground, it goes down as a pick, and it's just stupid shit like that. I think when it comes down to like doing the contracts, they look more at like the culture, the hard work you're putting in, and the wins and the losses, rather than any other stat line. And unfortunately, market value is determined by the market around you. Unfortunately, you can't just have like a blind negotiation with your quarterback.
This is very true. I mean, look at you guys signing AJ Brown just before the whole goddamn receiver market went mental. These things have an effect. On that note, I think we can call it a day for this week's episode. A good episode that it was. We will be back next week. Next week will be us talking about everything that happens from the action this weekend and previewing UFC 295, which I'm very excited about. Huge card, big episode. If you've watched this far, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. We'll be back next week. We hope you have a great week ahead and enjoy the fights. Peace out, guys.